Welcome back to Bitcoin Season 2. I've got Nick, co-founder of Gamma, a Bitcoin NFT Ordinals Launchpad marketplace, and they have a very interesting product solving the price and market discovery problem with NFTs. We're going to dive into the broader NFT market, explain what it is, and some of the intractable problems, or maybe they are tractable, meaning they can be fixed. Nick has some very interesting ideas. So welcome back to Bitcoin Season 2. Bitcoin Season 2 is brought to you by Arch Network, the platform building bridgeless apps on Bitcoin. More on Arch later on the show. Let's kick it off. Nick, thanks for coming on Bitcoin Season 2. How are you? Last time we saw, we were in Vegas. You gave a pretty cool announcement. What are your takeaways from the conference Inscribing Vegas that we were at just a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, and hopefully can share some little bits of info or alpha for the listeners. But yeah, Inscribing Vegas and Bitcoin 2025 in general, like just it has a way. I think conferences in general, but especially Bitcoin conference, has a way of like reinvigorating kind of, you know, the feeling you have. I think there's like these periods of, especially like in the macro environment, like even outside of blockchain and crypto, you have like stock market going up, down, up, down, up, down. And, you know, you kind of can like question yourself a little bit, and you're like, oh, like where are things headed? And I think you like get people together in the same room, and you realize like you're all there for a good reason, and you're kind of building towards an exciting future, and it gets you like really hyped up again. So I don't know about you, but I'm like at peak again.
Yeah, like it's a lot of our conversations are with faceless people on the internet, or they have faces, but they're, you know, profile pictures, NFTs, Ordinals Inscriptions. They're cartoons that I'm talking to online. And then I get into like an actual room. You're like, oh, these are real people. I get along with them. It does reassure you about, you know, it's a lot of personal connection that can be built in those moments. So, okay, we're going to talk about NFTs, and we're going to lead this into a conversation specifically about Ordinals and inscriptions on Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, this is going for the listener who doesn't have any interest in NFTs, or maybe has no tactical experience with the market. I'm going to invite you to help walk me through what NFTs look like, and then a problem statement. So, let's talk NFTs. Can you give me like a general overview of what the NFT market looks like as it currently exists? Any chain, not just Bitcoin, like NFTs as a category. What does the market structure currently look like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think NFTs have followed the sort of like traditional hype cycle that you see with most new technology. You kind of have this very, very early, like initial experimentation that happens. And especially when it's something a little bit financialized, as NFTs are, you have this like meteoric rise where people are just like using it to do wild and wacky things. Chances are the vast majority of those things people are using it for are like not hitting the nail on the head in the right way. And so, you know, those use cases or like purely speculative things are probably going to fall by the wayside over time. And so I think like let's say around like 2021 or so, I think we were like towards the peak of that absolute like craze phase of the hype cycle. And then into 2022, 2023, even parts of 2024, we kind of were on like a little bit of a downtrend into you know, this more like bearish period where people were sort of questioning like, do NFTs make sense at all? Like, will they ever make sense for any use case? And that's again pretty typical for like any hype cycle, where you sort of just like question the whole thing. But you know, you have to remember, like, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater kind of a thing. And there are a lot of legitimate use cases for NFTs. And I think that's what we've been seeing over the past, let's call it like 12 to 18 months, of more of like a resurgence of like the use cases that work and that make sense and that have some kind of like lasting staying power like bringing themselves back to the forefront. So I'd say like are we near this like 2021 hype cycle level of attention, and honestly in some ways even like negative attention in my opinion? No, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think we're getting to like a steady state where people are realizing, okay, like I can do some useful things, and we can talk about what some examples of those. Or I can just like collect something beautiful, which is also, in my opinion, a valid use case, and a little bit less of like the pure speculation, which comes with good and bad. Some of it is like I can make a bunch of money in 12 minutes, and some of it is I can lose a bunch of money in 13 minutes, and yeah, everything that comes with that.
So there's like different like there's different categories of people who like participate in the NFT ecosystem. I'll invite you to kind of pull apart or explain like the different like sectors. You've got users, you've got marketplaces, you've got creators, you've probably got other categories of folks. Like what are like the distinguishing characteristics of each of these? Are there differentiations between marketplaces? Are there like are all creators the same? Again, this is a soft kind of broad question, but I invite you to go a little bit deeper into these different demographics.
Yeah, so I think you nailed like the key categories. I think you have I'd say like there's probably like three super broad categories, and then you of course have like sectors within those. But on like on the who is making the NFT, let's put it that way, the ordinal, the inscription, that's going to be some kind of creator, and I'm just going to call it creator broadly. That could refer to a single person, like an independent artist. It could be a small team of people that have some kind of community driven mission. So like maybe they have an interest in a certain thing, like maybe they really love rock climbing or something, and they're like, we're going to make a bouldering chat, and this NFT is going to be like the way that we represent our allegiance to this group. You also have brands, so like people outside of blockchain and crypto, like Mattel is a big one. Like they like to, with a lot of their different IP and different brands, they kind of like find a way to activate that within the digital realm in some way, shape, or form, and maybe that gives you some advantage when you're purchasing things, or maybe it's just like a fun collectible. And then you also have I think one type of creator that has been pretty popular in like recent years is like, let's call it like the hacker dev type. So you have somebody who maybe is experimenting with blockchain, or maybe gaming, or like something digital, something that's like truly native to the computer, and they like use NFTs either as a way to kind of bootstrap their efforts, or to like create a bit of momentum and like organic grassroots marketing around what they're doing. So I think like that covers at least a lot of the main types of creators, and it's fairly broad. And then you have you can of course like buy and sell and trade these things directly peer to peer, and at some level that is happening on the blockchain. But usually there's some kind of platform that makes it easy to actually get involved. So, our platform Gamma, for example, we have a really easy way for you as a collector, which is this final kind of category that I'll cover in a second, could come to a platform and you could say like, I don't really know what I'm doing, and we can give you instructions on both how to get onboarded to blockchain, but also how to actually get your hands on the thing that's being created. And so you have this sort of like, let's just call it like an interface level between a creator and then this final other side of it, which is a collector, a investor, a trader, however you want to frame that person. And to your point, like there's also multiple like sub factions of this other group. So you might have people who are here purely for speculative reasons, and they want to, you know, like invest in these as a financial instrument, and they're not really interested in what's being offered, and that's perfectly fine. You also have people who are maybe interested in like the art and the vibes, and they're just like purely collecting something that they think is cool or beautiful or vibey or trendy, and you know, they can kind of keep that almost like you would have like a designer bag or something like that. And then you have, you know, someone in the middle that's like, hey, I'm kind of like getting my feet wet. I'm maybe interested in playing a game or getting involved in a community, and this seems to be like a good way of doing that. Maybe there's also a slight speculative component to it. Maybe there's also a slight like, I love the look of this thing, but they're kind of somewhere in the middle. So I think those are like the three key groups that are involved in most NFTs.
So, about a little over 2 years ago, something big happened. It kind of altered both of our career trajectories and our focuses, which was previously NFTs were dominant on Ethereum, Solana, other blockchains, Tezos, and it was consensus that we couldn't put NFTs on Bitcoin. And then Casey Rodmore came up with this crazy idea, and that is what we call Ordinals and Inscriptions. Funny enough, on Bitcoin Season 2, I have not done like a modern explainer of what these things are. So I'm going to invite you, again, for a not super technical listener. You and I talk about this all the time. This is like very intuitive in our world. But like, what's the TLDR on why Ordinals and Inscriptions, we might call them Bitcoin NFTs, why are they different? What are they? Like, what's cool about them, and why are we, you and I, focused on that particular market sector?
Yeah. So I think like first off, just to get to the one thing you brought up, you were like, you know, people, it was basically consensus that it wasn't possible. I think like kind of like a cool little like intro to the like what they are and how they work is an analogy. I didn't come up with this. I don't know who did, but like, you know, on Bitcoin, it's quite difficult to figure out how to create like an independent digital asset that you can be aware of its placement, as in like who owns it and who has traded it, without something called smart contracts, which are pretty popular on Ethereum and other blockchains. And so when Casey created, he calls it ordinal theory because it's you can think of it as like something that you can opt into if you'd like to, and the analogy is like it's like putting on a pair of special glasses that allows you to see things that were perhaps always there, but you didn't know how to make sense of them. And so with ordinal theory, you have a way now of tracing Bitcoin in a specific sort of like accounting method to identify like this is a digital collectible and this is just regular Bitcoin that is not special in any other way. And when you put on these glasses, they let you see like what that there is a digital collectible here. And so I think it's like a fun way to think about like, why was this not possible before and why is it possible now, is because of this, like this kind of like shared like story that we're all going to believe in, and like money is a story in a way. Like we're all going to believe that digital collectibles on Bitcoin are possible, and if we all subscribe to that and we all wear the same flavor of glasses, like it will all make sense to us. So that's at least like how
that's like one of the best non-technical explainers ever, I think. You don't have ordinal theories, you just like opt in, you just adopt our shared delusion, and now you also have an inscription or an ordinal.
Exactly. I was trying to avoid delusion, which is a phrase Casey likes to use.
This is me. I'm at fault for saying it. Yeah.
yeah. Go for it. So now like you've put the glasses on and you're able to see what we're all, you know, what we're all talking about. Inscriptions are are the actual collectibles that you're creating on Bitcoin. And they're called inscriptions rather than NFTs because they differ in a pretty meaningful way from most other NFTs on basically every other blockchain. And it's, you can think of it like as the actual act of like inscribing, like engraving the digital content, let's say it's a photograph, into the blockchain directly. So much like you would, engrave or inscribe like with a rock into another rock, you want to like put a message there. You can do that with Bitcoin. And so what you're actually doing is you're taking the data that makes up this photograph that you have. Let's say it's like a screenshot from this Bitcoin season 2, pod, and you say like, I want to save this forever. You can take that data and you can inscribe it into Bitcoin. And so how this differs from most other NFTs is NFTs as a technology is really more than anything a way of determining ownership. And so, you have sort of like a line in a Excel or Google spreadsheet that says, I have a certain token, that's the T in NFT, and it is non-fungible. It's different from all the other ones. That's the NF in NFT. And so it's one line in this spreadsheet. And right now, that line says it's owned by me, Nick, and I'm gonna like pass it over to you, Charlie, and I'm gonna update the line in the table. And so that's really what NFTs are doing on most blockchains. They're just saying, Nick was originally the owner, now Charlie's the owner, and like great, like we now know who owns it and the history of who owned it. And in some ways, that's a powerful idea in itself. But on Bitcoin, and again, why we call them inscriptions, is it's not just about who owns it. You could imagine in that spreadsheet, if you added another column for an image that you actually insert. And now you have some like visual data in this example that is associated. And the I think other key differentiator is we're not just putting like a link to that image that might be stored on some decentralized file network like IPFS or Arweave, which really, when you boil it down, is probably stored on an AWS like computer that somebody has running somewhere. It's actually, because it's been inscribed on Bitcoin, it is running on Bitcoin nodes. And in some ways, Bitcoin nodes you might boil it down, and some of them may be AWS machines as well, but some of them won't be. And you don't just have a few of these, you have not even just dozens or hundreds of these, not even thousands of these, you have tens of thousands of these Bitcoin nodes that are running, that are storing this image that you've put in that spreadsheet. And so now, even if you didn't put on those glasses and opt into what that image means, it's going to be there on your Bitcoin node. And I think that this is better for a couple of reasons. Like, one is the obvious, you now have this photo on tens of thousands of machines. But the other one I think is more important, which is you have tens of thousands of machines that have a financial interest independent from your image existing, that like they have a reason to keep this alive. If your Bitcoin is worth something and you want it to continue to be worth something, you're probably going to want to keep that node running. And so you have this like independent reason to keep my photograph alive on your Bitcoin node. So you're kind of like, like free riding a little bit on all of those other people who have their other incentives for running their Bitcoin node. Like, why not take advantage of that like expenditure that they're already doing, and put your photograph on there. So anyway, like to kind of like wrap that up, you have this way now of putting content onto Bitcoin, and you have a way of like putting on these glasses to make sense of what this data is doing and what it looks like, and then you have a way of trading these things, but you also have now this like super decentralized and super redundant, and in a good way. Like there's many copies of this stored all around the world. And I like to say that I think there is no more redundant and likely to live on set of data in the world that humanity has ever created than the data in a Bitcoin node, because you have it in every country, every socioeconomic state, maybe even on the moon someday. Like you're gonna have this data, and so if like 90% of the world, gets like attacked by a nuclear holocaust or something, it's probably going to be like at least one copy of a Bitcoin node somewhere that still has this beautiful screenshot of the Bitcoin Season 2 podcast that will be inscribed on Bitcoin.
Let me tell you about one of the most slept on opportunities in crypto. Arch is building fast, composable DeFi apps on Bitcoin. Arch apps tap into the OG blockchain with by far the most liquidity and best brand in crypto. I've known the team for over a year. The tech they're building is solid, and they are racing towards mainnet. There's DEXs like Saturn, meme coins on FunkyBit.fun, instant loans on Cha-Ching, and so much more. Plus, they're rewarding testnet users, so join me in trying out Arch while it's still early. So, we have this very compelling use case for Bitcoin and Bitcoin nodes, but then we get into where it gets less pure, where it gets a little more hairy, which is the actual market. How these things are highly speculative, and there's a market for it. And over the years, the actual user experience and creator experience has become fraught with like trying to figure out how you sell these things. Like, because we're in a really interesting period of use case discovery and price discovery, and even just model for the entire ecosystem discovery, like we've entered into almost like extreme hyper financialization of these things. And I'm leading into inviting you to try to explain some of the weird and wacky mechanics of the NFT and ordinal price discovery, market discovery challenges. A lot of these happen on interesting applications like Discord and Twitter, and and there's a whole system for gamifying who gets what. How do you want to try to explain this to a listener who probably has never logged on Discord before, or probably doesn't hang out on NFT Twitter? How do you explain the weird, distorted market discovery process?
Imagine you're trying to buy something, anything. Let's say it's like your iPhone or something like that. There may be a very legitimate reason to want an iPhone. And you'd really love to just walk in the store and hand over your money to Apple and be like, I would like an iPhone, please. But I think, and we can talk about why it doesn't work this way in a second, but just to again paint this wacky picture, in most NFTs and ordinals, instead, let's say you want that iPhone. You're before you even get in the car to go to the store, you're probably gonna have to sign up for some weird list, and you're gonna say okay, well, I'd really like to buy it, and I have money in my pocket, and I'm ready to hand it over, and I'm a customer and I should be treated as such, but I need to first play a bit of a game to prove that I'm worthy enough to buy this thing, and so. First you might have to provide certain details, or, like you said, maybe you have to go on Discord and join a server and send random messages in the chat for a while. You just have to say GM a lot, or react to certain things. And that will make you a little bit more worthy to buy this thing. And then after that, the next step will be to go on X or Twitter, and maybe you have to, hunt down some post, and you need to repost that, or you need to quote it and add some commentary as to why you think that this iPhone is going to like reshape the world in ways that someone could never imagine. And then you need to, like tag 5 of your cousins to make sure that they also know that the iPhone is going to reshape the world. And then, like after doing 10, 20 more of these like ridiculous steps, hopefully, if it wasn't, like if somebody didn't like bribe the creator of the project to like give them more allocation than leaves available for you to buy one, you will hopefully be granted something that's called a whitelist, is often what people call it. And so this whitelist will give you the ability to go and purchase that thing. And I think the idea behind whitelists initially was there is so much demand, we need to find a way to like give it to good people, and then quickly devolved into there is not actually that much demand because like this thing is worthless. Like it's not an iPhone. It's like a Post-it note that I like scribbled a little face on. And like I need to like feign that there is a lot of demand for this. So I'm still going to make you go through all of these motions and make you like perform all of these steps to make it feel like it's in high demand and make it feel like I'm selecting the cream of the crop here. But in reality, anyone who completes any number of these steps, I'm just going to give them a whitelist anyway. And maybe like 5% of those people that I give this whitelist to will show up and actually buy the Post-it note with the face I scribbled on it. And so yeah, like that's sort of like the way that like this is barely an exaggeration. Like it actually works this way for most projects. I mean, there's projects where you even have to go and take a shower in like a costume. I'm just teasing, Udi, but no, I mean there's like all of these steps, and then hopefully you'll be like one of the chosen ones who can buy this thing. And I think like I teased a little bit as to like the why it's this way, but I think like, when you really boil it down, it happens this way for a few reasons. One is like people think that this is just the way it ought to work because it's the way that it kind of did from 2021, and like that probably means that it's smart to go this way. And I think another reason is, maybe you have something that isn't worth something and you're trying to like pretend that it is. And so that's another like good reason to go with this model. But I think there's like a third kind that is like a legitimate, honest, like attempt to use this process in a healthy way, which is I have something that is actually useful or valuable or collectible in some way. Maybe I'm an artist and I like pour my heart and soul into something that I'm creating. And I just like truly don't know if people are interested in it. And let's say there's 100 of them. Maybe there are 100 people or more than 100 people that are interested in this, and that's great. But I have no idea like what they would be willing to pay for this. And I use the example of an artist because I think that's like a prime example of where it's fairly subjective. Like it's worth what the collector of this art piece thinks it's worth. And so I think there's like a legitimate attempt for a lot of artists specifically who use this process, this again, I think broken, wacky process to try to like find some signal there of like if people are actually interested in this thing that I've like spent a lot of time on and really want to like get out into the world. So yeah, I hope that kind of like covers it and maybe segues a little into what we're doing.
Yeah, that really does. That's a perfect segue. And again, for the listener, this is not a sponsored pod. This is me being genuinely interested in the product Nick is building and having watched Nick talk about this. So that leads us into Gamma's solution, or the new kind of like, I don't know, what do you call signals.art? What's the term you're using?
Yeah. So it's I'm glad you asked this because like there aren't any like exact comps for what we're doing, so we kind of had to give it a term, and like maybe we'll revise this in the future, but we're calling it a go-to-market platform. So it's like, okay, yeah, if you like want to get going and you need to like figure out how to do that, you can use Signals, which is a go-to-market platform, to do that.
what is the go-to-market platform? Like what does it look like, and how does it solve? Again, these are kind of like layups, but how does it solve the problems you just described about the NFT like whitelist market sizing?
I think like Signals is really an attempt to like go to like first principles about like what is trying to be solved here by like legitimate actors. Like I'm not talking about people who are like using a whitelist system to like pretend that there's demand, but like the first and the third groups I called out. Like if somebody is really like trying to launch something, what's important to them? Chances are like they are trying to see if people are interested in what they're doing. And so they want some signal of that, and that's why we call it signals. And they also want like a way to like keep in touch with these people. So I'd say one of the like valuable aspects of like the way that things used to work, hopefully used to work soon, is like, okay, you can go join our Discord or follow me on Twitter. And now you have like a lightweight way to stay in touch with these people. In my opinion, it's not like a great way because the algorithm will just kind of like bury your posts anyway. But there is an attempt there to like, form a little bit of a bond or a connection with the people that might be interested. And there's also a huge problem that I don't think the whitelisting process solved at all, which is what should I actually charge for what I'm releasing? And so, it's an interesting one because even if what you're making has like a price maybe rooted in some history, like maybe you launched a similar thing last year, or maybe there's like a competitor to it, let's say it's like a game or something, that isn't necessarily a proof source that today the same price will be achieved, or that the same price is accurate. Like maybe there's maybe something only sold for $50 last year because there were only like 50 people around to buy it, and now there's like 20,000 people around to buy it, and like as a result $50 is like way too low. So it kind of goes both ways. And so Signals is like, let's try to solve like those like problems that people are facing, and we do this in a pretty like interesting way. It's quite novel, but it's like based in patterns you've probably seen elsewhere. So I think like as a platform, you can think of Signals a little bit like a Kickstarter for creative projects. So, if you're familiar with Kickstarter, you'll go on Kickstarter, you'll see maybe somebody is making like a deck of cards or something like that. And they want to like physically manufacture and print these cards, and there's a cost to doing that. So they want to make sure that like people are interested before they do that. And so you can come to Kickstarter, you can pre-purchase this thing, and like hopefully if they succeed, you will get your deck of cards. This is like, I think, an evolution on that, and also a little bit more purpose built for digital items. In that, first off, like I think having to prepay for the full item ahead of time before you even know if you're going to receive it is not ideal, especially in the internet, where hopefully like these are like people and have been following for a while, but they could be someone that's like you have no idea.
It's often common for people to just pay up front for these digital items and then never receive them, or they're like not delivered in the way that users expect. Yeah. So it's like, that's like kind of like a slight thing that we wanted to like to adjust in just thinking about like Kickstarter in general. But also like it aims to help you discover what a true market price is. So this is like quite meaningfully different now from just like a regular Kickstarter, because let's say you have let's say you have a series of 10 artworks that you have like hand drawn or painted or something like that. You've put in like hundreds of hours into this. You're maybe a reasonably well-known artist, but you don't necessarily have like a fixed price that you always sell things for. And there's only 10 of them, and there might be like
5 or 5,000 interested people in these, and you're like, help me, like what do I even begin to price these things at? Like in terms of my soul and the work that I put into it, they're priceless. But I certainly don't want to let them go for $3 either. Like and so you can come to Signals and basically say, I have this project. First and foremost, I want to see if anyone's like even remotely interested in it, and so we'll let people sort of like opt in and raise their hand and say that they're interested. But you also then can say, well, okay, you're interested. Are you interested to like accept it for free, or are you interested in paying for this? And okay, hopefully you're interested in paying for this. Well, how much would you pay for this? And so there's a little bit of like an auction that happens where people can say what they'd be willing to pay for something, and maybe one person is willing to pay as much as $500 for this thing that you've created. Maybe another person is only willing to pay $5, and another person is willing to pay $50. And so we want to basically discover what is the fair price for all 10 of these items that are more or less equivalent to one another, but maybe slightly different styles or something. And like, I don't think it's right to say, well, one person should pay $500 and one person should pay $50 and one person should pay $3. But it's also not fair to the creator to be like, okay, well, you should just pick $5 and like let them all go. So it's like we need to like find a middle ground there. And so what Signals does is we say we're going to take all of the bids from everyone. Let's say there's 50 bids for these 10 items, and we're going to rank them from highest to lowest, just like a regular auction. But where it differs is, instead of saying that $500 bid, that person is just going to pay like way more than the next person, we're going to look at the 10th bid. So there's 10 items. And so we're going to say, okay, what's the 10th bid? And let's say in this example, it's $100. And we're going to say, okay, well, we looked at the market, we saw everyone that was interested, and we got to, 50 interested people who were willing to spend money on these 10 things. And the true clearing price, it's often called, the price at which the market as a whole was willing to pay for all 10 of these items was $100, because there were only 9 people willing to pay more than that. There were only 8 people willing to pay more than that, but there were 10 people willing to pay $100 or more. And so we're going to make everyone above that line just pay the $100. So even if you bid $500, you're not punished. You'll still just pay that $100. And if you didn't bid enough, let's say you bid $75, then you're not going to get one. And so you really have just the choice to say what you think something is worth, and like let the cards fall where they fall. And I think this is like the absolute fairest approach to all participants. Like, the creator is truly getting not the most number of dollars that they could have possibly earned, but they're getting the most number of dollars that people would have paid for all 10 of the things that they've created. And I think that's like a really important distinction from like a traditional auction. And again, you're not punishing people for overbidding.
Yeah, this, I had not really focused on NFTs as a market sector or as a cultural side of things. I'd been, kind of from the outside looking in and, curious and participating over the years. But one thing that, especially as I've been thrust into the center of the market in the Bitcoin world, that I've seen, which is unfortunate, which is there's a lot of creators who have good intentions and want to try to fairly price their stuff. But because of the cultural, posthumous evaluation of like whether a project was good or not, based upon the current price of the asset relative to its initial launch price, there's been a lot of like bad blood. And in, another way of saying this is, if the floor price or the average price of the asset is down from when people bought it, people retroactively assign good or bad moral intentions to that creator. And so I see this as a way to just insulate creators from that as much as possible, because there's a lot of people, a lot of artists who really, they're focusing on the art. They're not focusing on trying to like perfectly gamify the market.
Hey, Will here with Blockspace Media. Did you know that we have individual feeds for all our shows? If you're watching the Mining Pod, Bitcoin Season 2, or the Court Show, be sure to check out the individual feeds. You can find them on your podcast player of choice, whether that be Spotify, Apple, YouTube, etc. Just type in Blockspace Media and you'll find all our shows pop up, or just type in the individual show name like the Mining Pod or Bitcoin Season 2. Be sure to hit that subscribe and give us a 5-star rating so we can continue to bring you the best content in Bitcoin.
I'm going to switch gears and throw a couple, I would say, difficult questions that I think some of my critical listeners would want me to ask. And this is just about NFTs in general, digital assets. Do you think digital assets ever become not overly speculative? And do you think that there actually is a healthy, sustainable market that these can achieve sometime in the future?
I think yes. I mean, I'm biased here, of course, but I mentioned the hype cycle at the beginning of our conversation. And like when you follow any hype cycle, you know, it kind of looks a bit like this. It goes up like a roller coaster, and it comes down into this trough, and then it kind of levels out and like has a little bit of like a log curve, like a little bit lower than that maybe like peak, but it kind of like finds its footing. And I think we're already beginning to see that. We're beginning to see more legitimate, you know, teams, builders, artists like wanting to use this technology. And I think like some of it is like just like the name NFT, I think, is like a bad word now, and people are like, yeah.
I'm like, I feel I cringe having to say it, but I'm like, the listener doesn't know. A listener, we call them inscriptions. If they're on Bitcoin, they're inscriptions. I'm always saying NFT just so that like we, you know, people don't.
Exactly. It's like I like to call them like digital collectibles, and that's not like a perfect term because maybe that's not like the particular use case of the thing that you're buying. But I think like you know, to give a silly example, but actually a pretty good one in my opinion. When you're trying to like send an email, you don't like search Google and be like, I want to find the best SMTP client, like to send my email. And that's kind of like when you say, I'm going to like use an NFT to establish provenance and ownership in my database that's decentralized. Like it's just like using those underlying technological things. What you probably do when you want to send an email or like sign up for the first time is say like, easy email provider, or like want to send electronic message to my friend. Like you're focusing on the like the outcome and like the ease of use. And so you know, like NFTs are as good or bad as their use case, but they're just like a way of like maintaining who owns something on the internet. Like and I think it's very short-sighted to say that we don't have a reason to want to know who owns something on the internet. Like that, in my opinion, is like clearly a valid and valuable thing for humanity to be able to do in a more and more digitizing world. And so if we just focus on like wanting to know who owns something on the internet, I think it's almost crazy, in my opinion, not to agree that there will be some legitimate uses of that. And so, like to like answer more directly, like, yes, I think there are and will continue to be more and more legitimate reasons for people to want to know who owns something on the internet. And will some of them always be speculative? Probably yes, because you know, like that's the case even in like outside of blockchain. Like there's no reason that Beanie Babies or like or baseball cards or anything like that should be worth hundreds or thousands or even millions of dollars. But they are, because like humans enjoy speculating and having something that's rare and having something that's special and telling its story, and like, you know, we're storytellers, and like that's what we like to do. And so yeah, there's going to be some subset of these things that will probably always be financialized and speculative, and that's okay. But there's also going to be some valid, like, or I don't want to call those invalid, but there's also going to be some more traditional, like, I'm just wanting to like sell something that is like independently valuable from the fact that it happens to be secured by an NFT.
You actually answered. You front ran all my other questions. So yeah, you actually addressed most of the angles I was gonna try to press you on. I appreciate that. Let's wrap this up. I want to throw this back at you. Where do people find? Where do people learn more? CTA. What do people do now?
Yeah. So if you're either a creator, brand, whatever it may be, and you're like trying to like either get involved and maybe you don't have like a big following and you're just trying to like test the waters, we're gonna have like a little bit of a rollout period. So it'll probably be like a month or two, but you'll be able to launch something on our platform Signals. So that's at Signals with an S at the end .art. And if you're on the other side of things, like you're just like watching and maybe you have a couple of NFTs from 2021 and you're down bad and you're trying to see like how have things evolved and like where are they now, or maybe you've never done this before at all, you can come to signals.art and you can find some interesting, like basically Kickstarter-esque project ideas for what people are working on, and you can decide if you think they're worth it. And you can get involved really easily. And just one other like quick mention there is we make it super easy. So if you've been like, skittish because you don't want to have to go and set up a wallet and what's a wallet and how do I fund it and all the like steps involved in doing that, you don't have to make that decision right now with Signals. You can go to Signals. You can find something, you can back it or bid on it like without having to set up a wallet. And then once you hopefully get your hands on access to buying that thing, you then can set up the wallet, and we'll give you instructions and make it super easy to do that. So if you're on either side of the aisle, like I invite you to come try it out. You'll notice when you get to signals.art right now, it is invite only. And we're mainly just doing that because we want to like really queue up like a good early community to give like the creators of the earliest projects the best chance of like having lots of eyeballs see what they've been working on and really find like true market demand for this. So we're just sort of like having people, like line up, and then we'll open the floodgates, let everybody in at the same time, and let them, like see what they think is interesting. And so as a listener of the show, we've created a special code and
you made it to the end. You get the goods.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you, Charlie, also for letting me shill this. As he said, this is not a paid sponsorship or anything. This is out of the kindness of his heart. So thank you. You can put in hashtag BS2 for Bitcoin Season 2. So all capital letters, no spaces, include the hashtag BS2 as your invite code. And we'll also give you, in using that, some free, we call them bars, signal bars, like bars of gold, or and you can use these to place bids. So you'll actually be able to bid on a couple of things, all thanks to Charlie here. So yeah, hashtag BS2, signals.art, and at signalsart on X. And yeah, thanks again, Charlie.
Yeah, Nick, thanks for coming on, helping walk us through the wild and wacky world of NFTs and how Bitcoin is the place they should be. So without further ado, thank you so much for coming to Bitcoin Season 2. Catch us everywhere you find podcasts streamed, and I'll see you next week.